Motorcycle Men. Time now for Rider Rides with your host, Ted Kettler.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of Rider Rides here on the Motorcycle Men podcast. Joining me tonight, all the way from Silicagua, I have a hard time saying that. Silicagua? How do you want to say that?
Silicaga.
I like it. Alabama. Our new friend, Mr. Paul Godfrey. Paul, welcome to the Motorcycle Men podcast.
Thank you, Ted. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing lovely. I got a little ride-in tonight before the interview, and we're ready to roll. You have a bike that is unusual in that I've never spoken to anyone who has a bike like this. While it is an ordinary bike, it may have started that way, but is no longer an ordinary bike. So why don't you tell us what bike you own?
Well, it started out as a 2007 Harley Sportster, an 883 low. The prior owner converted it to a Trike by adding a Trike conversion swing arm and rear axle. When we picked it up a couple years ago, it was something my wife and I walked into a local dealer here and saw it and just fell in love with it.
Nice. I'm looking at the pictures of it, and it's like I can honestly say I have never seen a Sportster converted like this, and it is really, really interesting. So I would ask you why you chose the bike, but I guess it seems like the bike chose you.
Well, probably correct. I have a bad knee, and my wife and I wanted to get into riding. I had never ridden before. She had throughout her life. But I was always afraid of holding up a heavier bike. And we looked at some larger size Yamahas and some Harleys and even some larger scooters that we could ride two up on. But I just never felt comfortable being able to hold up that weight.
I see. Now, you said you have scooters?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll ask you about that later. That sounds interesting. So why don't you give us a few details about the bike, like tank size, seat height, weight, and all that stuff, which I'm really interested to hear about the weight.
Well, I estimated about 860 pounds.
Oh, my God.
I can tell. So, but that's about 300 pounds more than your base Sportster model because of the extra swing arm and the heavier axle and, of course, the differential that's on it.
Sure.
It's also had a wide glide front end added to give it a better steering rake, which you need with a Trike.
But that's the same front wheel that you have from the Sportster, correct?
That's correct. It's just got some spacers in it to fill in the space, and the brakes have been modified a little bit as well.
Wow.
It's got the standard Sportster tank, about 3 1/3 gallons. It's still got the same 883 engine, which I would like to do a 1200cc update on, which we can talk about later when we get into some of the mods.
Sure.
But other than that, it's just pretty standard other than the Trike conversion.
You know what I find interesting about this is I owned a 94 883 Sportster. And that front wheel that you have on there, the spokes, that mag wheel you have there, is the exact same one that was on my bike.
I'm not surprised. I think Harley put that on those Sportsters for several years.
Yeah, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
That's the way I go for it.
So how many miles are on this?
Right now it's a little over 31,000.
And are those all of your miles?
No, only about the last 2.5. We bought it. It had slightly over 28,000. I have been unable to ride for probably the last 6 months. I had a little accident on it right before Thanksgiving last year.
Oh, no. What'd you do?
Well, I was making a left-hand turn and 2 blocks from the house, and somehow or another I wound up in the neighbor's front yard, crossed a ditch. Not real sure what happened. Broke 8 bones in my foot. That put me out of commission for about 14 weeks that I couldn't even get up and put any weight on it. But I was cleared last month to get back on the bike again. And so as soon as it quits raining around here, I will start over again.
I feel your pain. So did any damage happen to the bike?
Actually, none. There's a little dent in one of the fenders on the right side, which you couldn't see even if you knew where to look, because I just happen to know where it's at.
Oh, okay.
The speculation from my orthopedist is that the foot peg came down on top of my foot when I crossed a little ditch.
Ah, I see.
It was cold out that day, and I had on extra heavy gloves. Probably weren't the correct riding gloves, and I probably just throttled it up too much when I made the left and lost it. So.
Oh, there you go. That'll do it. What you need, I'll tell you what, we'll get into this in a moment. But as far as it goes for modifications, tell us about what you've done.
Well, one of the first things I wanted to do was put all LED lighting on it. Of course, looking at the price of the Harley LED kit for the Daymaker kind of made me jump back, so I had to go aftermarket.
Of course.
But put all LED lighting on it, which was great. I've also added a Master Tune fuel tuner, which I've tinkered around with a little bit. The prior owner had put in the 2-into-1 exhaust pipes on it, so the exhaust was fine. It just needed to be rebaffled because they had left it open pipes, and it was giving me a headache every time I rode it.
I know that feeling.
Put a Hammer Performance intake on it, which I really love because now you can actually hear this thing breathe. The stock intake was real restrictive. Added a better seat for my wife to ride in. It's actually made out of a drum throne instead of a regular pillion seat.
I was going to say something. I was going to say, I don't think that really looks like a normal motorcycle seat there. Okay, how did you adapt that?
Well, basically the base just unscrewed, and it has 4 mounting bolts, and I just made a little bracket that fit on the adapter plate on the back of the bike and put it on there. We were at a music supply store, and she sat down in that and said, "Hey, this is what I want to ride on." And I was like, "We can do that."
Well, hey, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
That's right.
So what other mods did you make to it?
Put some lower air deflectors on it. I was listening to Larry Lanes on the Throttle podcast come in about the buffeting he experienced on his Sportster, and I was thinking, well, I have the same problem. So I got in touch with him, and he gave me some suggestions on what he called Harley fangs. So I went out and looked at all the different options that were out there. And, of course, since my front end is not what traditionally came on a Sportster, I had to do a little engineering. But I've added some plastic Lexan lower deflectors on the front. And now when I get up above 60 miles an hour, I don't have any buffeting at all. It's amazing air that comes up over the tank there and just gives me a bobblehead.
Wow. And now that windshield that you have on there, is that what windshield is that?
That's a Harley windshield. Again, it's designed to fit the 41 millimeter wide glide.
Oh, that's nice.
But it's an adjustable. I don't say if it's adjustable. I mean, you can unclamp it and move it up and down. But I've got it in the position which works for me.
Right.
I can see over it instead of through it. Which seeing through it, and if it ever rains, just totally messed me up. So I had to.
I know that. Yeah, I've been there. What size tires are those in the back?
Those are 185 15s, or I guess you would say. 185 15s. I can't remember the other metric number for them now.
That's
probably 70. It's probably 185 70 15s.
Those are
now the rims are aftermarket rims off of a first edition Mustang.
No kidding. Oh, that is so cool. And then you got those brightly polished chrome fenders on that.
Yes, and I think that's what makes it unique.
Absolutely.
Most of the trikes I've seen, especially the production ones and even the aftermarket kits, come with a full fiberglass body kit, which looks good, but they all, to me, look the same from a distance. This definitely gives it maybe a somewhat industrial look, but I definitely like it.
Oh, it definitely sticks out. It's really nice. Tell us what you really like most about this configuration of this bike.
I guess it's the uniqueness. Haven't seen anything like it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And for its size, I mean, it does well with me and my wife both on it. of course, being a trike, it doesn't lean, but I don't have to balance at stoplights either.
Right.
So, there's some good and bad there. But what I like most, I think, is just the uniqueness of it.
Wow. How does it handle?
Pretty good, but caveat, it doesn't lean. So
Yeah.
when you go into a corner, or if the road has got any grade to it, you can't straighten the bike up. You have to kind of roll with it. And it's a
Yeah.
little unnerving to begin with. It takes a lot more upper body strength since there's no counter steering, so you really have to muscle it into the turns.
Yeah.
But, other than that, it does okay.
Do you find that you have to like scoot your butt off the seat a little bit?
Again, if you got a road that's got a berm for drainage purposes on it, and you feel like the whole bike is just going to lean, yes, I find myself scooting the other way to stay upright because it's just odd. Now, maybe if it had independent rear suspension, I could wiggle it a little bit, but this is a solid axle and it doesn't give.
Oh boy. So I have to ask you then. It's like what kind of riding do you do?
Just mostly around town, maybe 100-mile stints. My wife and I will decide we'll want to go out and get a bite to eat and go to the nearest big city where we live. We're about 50 miles away from any decent-sized town in any direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about what we do. We have not taken any long trips. Again, with my knee, I don't know how tired I would get going for a long distance. But we normally just, we real close here to the Talladega National Forest. We'll take a ride up to Mount Cheehaw or out through the forest there and the foothills and enjoy that.
All right. How does the bike perform on those long rides?
It does really well. I wish it had a little more power on the low end when we're first taking off, especially with riding 2-up. It just doesn't quite have enough torque to get itself going, especially if I got to start off on a hill.
Right.
But again, I'm hoping one day to do the 1200cc upgrade on it, and hopefully that'll help that out.
Well, what's the longest ride you've done?
Probably last fall, my wife and I went up to the Barber Festival.
There you go. Yeah.
And we got up there and then took a little ride with some of the guys we met up with from the Throttle podcast. And by the time we got back home and all, it was a little over 200 miles. So that was about the longest we've been.
Nice. You know what you need to put on this bike? You need to put on there an engine guard and some highway pegs.
I've thought of that.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you what. I've got the engine guard and the highway pegs on my bike, and I cannot imagine riding without them.
That would probably help a lot because I'm right now I'm kind of limited, as to how much freedom I've got.
Oh, sure. And what you could add, I believe you should be able to add some floorboards on that bike.
Well, actually, my doctor, when I went and told him what I had done on the bike, he said, you really need to put floorboards on that.
Yeah.
So he's probably giving me good advice like you are. So that's probably going to be my next purchase.
That's it. You get the floorboards and you get the engine guard and the highway pegs, and you'll be super comfortable. Definitely. So why should somebody get this bike? But it's the Sportster, but it's a Sportster Trike, so it's not like you can go out and buy one of these. But I guess somebody could want to do this.
Well, the kits are readily available. The company that makes this particular conversion kit is called DNA Specialties out of California.
Right.
It's a knockoff of a Pagio rear end. From what I may have said Pagio wrong, but hey, I'm from the South, so hey, what can I get? It seems to be fairly well made, and there are plenty of things out on the internet on how to do this, and it seems to be something anybody with reasonable tools could do in their backyard if they want to convert something to a trike. My biggest reason would be if you feel like you've got a physical disability which may limit your ability to balance a heavier bike. Mm-hmm. Or if you're maybe like in my case, it's a mental disability, you're afraid you can't balance a bigger bike.
Right.
Then this may give you the comfort you need to get out and continue riding.
This is
or in my case, start riding.
Well, this is probably something I should talk my brother into doing, but I don't know if he would ever do it. Now, the bags that you have on there, was this something that you added yourself, or was this part of the kit?
The bags were made by Austin, I think it was Austin Leather, and they were on it when we bought it. They didn't have the studs. My wife and I added the studs to kind of give it that more rustic look.
Sure.
They are top access, but we've added a snap and a flap in the back where you can get to them from the backside as well, because with the passenger seat up there, the top access was a little difficult.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, yeah. All right, now the biggest question I have to ask you now. We all know that Harley-Davidson has their own color names. What color is your bike?
It is.
I can look, before you say that, I look at it and I go, blue. What does Harley-Davidson call this?
Well, I call it blue, but Harley calls it deep cobalt pearl.
There isn't no blue in that name whatsoever.
There's very little pearl on the bike. If you get it in the sun, it's got a little metallic flake, but you know.
All right. Way to go, Harley-Davidson. All right. Well, Paul, I want to thank you very much for joining me here on Rider Rides on the Motorcycle Men podcast. Anything last you want to say before I kick you off the phone?
Just everybody out there listening, get out and ride. Enjoy yourself, no matter what it is you ride, and be safe.
Excellent. I want to thank you very much for listening, and also thank you very much for joining me here on Rider Rides on the Motorcycle Men podcast, Paul.
Thank you, Ted.
Take care.
If you'd like to be featured with your bike on Rider Rides, here's what you do. Go to the Motorcycle Men website at www.motorcyclemen.us. Go to the episodes page and fill out the form and submit. If selected, all you have to do is provide us with a soundbite of your bike, and you'll get a one-on-one interview with your host. Thanks for listening, and keep on riding.